Hi everyone, Adrian Player here, mortgage broker, and now you can go and watch video 1 and 2 on what's been happening because I haven't been doing videos on YouTube or any of my socials for quite a while. Now you kind of understand, what we've done personally in the last 5 to 6 years, and now the reasons for selling 9 resi investment properties. And now you can kind of see the framework of how we got here, right? So go back and watch videos 1 and 2. So after we noticed that properties were hitting affordability limits, and we could graph out kind of when we thought, because everyone thinks that I follow the land cycle, and I use a portion of that, right? But I've been in lending for so long, close to 17 years now, that I believe that there are a lot of cycles running concurrently, right? And then there's a lot of demographic and a lot of cultural issues that are happening in a lot of different Western countries at the moment. So I believe that, the land cycle is definitely one thing, but then I kind of bring it back to, especially in the Brisbane market, affordability limits were being hit, prices were hitting certain levels, and then I kind of compare the last 5 to 6 years of Brisbane compared to the rest of the country. Then I try and go back 100 years to find a market that's gone up this much that continued going up, and I couldn't find that. So then I'm like, okay, I don't know if the market's going to go nowhere for the next 8 to 12 years, or I don't know if it's going to go down 20 to 40%. And I don't like either of those options. And I've made a good lot of money, but I've only made money until I sell. And I do not want to sell with the rest of the herd. So what did I do? About 18 months ago, 24 months ago, we were starting to get way too many maintenance requests with our old Brisbane properties. We couldn't get the granny flats on in time. I didn't take the 4 or 5 year fix on the really low rates. So it just got to a point where we had to find a solution. And the solution was wait until the second or the third rate cut and sell into momentum before the herd, which is exactly what we did. Some of the properties we had to sell off a little bit earlier because we were getting larger maintenance requests. And then it's kind of like, okay, this is the second or the third time this has happened. If we start getting a wall issue, subsidence issues, or roof issues, then, you're in a position where you don't want to have the 100 or 150 grand problem, right? So I'm willing to sell a property early, which is what we did with our 2 units, where one of the units was trickling down into the second unit, one above the other. So we did as best a patch and maintenance job as we could to make sure that the next buyer was not going to have that issue. But was that issue going to come back in the next 2 to 3 years? Maybe, and it could have turned into a much bigger issue. So that's why we bought the units for 160, low 160s, and we sold them for 380 to 388, right? Same thing with our Raceview property. We had 2 or 3 water maintenance issues, and then the bottom room kept getting flooded with water seeping through the bricks. So it ended up getting to a point where we had to get rid of that, right? Okay, so the rest we held on until the end of the market. All right. So now that we've done that, where are we at the moment? Well, we make our money off the 9 properties. And then I've got to ask myself the question, where does that money go to? And it actually gets really stressful because you start seeing a very large balance sitting in your account. And then you start understanding where we are in a certain cycle. And bear in mind, I'm very much a person that says there are times to be risk on and there are times to be risk off, right? Risk off doesn't mean you don't do anything. It just means you do things in a risk off way, okay, in an area that's lower risk than what you're doing at the moment, and you do it with larger cash buffers, lower LVRs, and hopefully you're before the herd, so your early money compared to the herd that will be later, right? So that's what we've done. So we were sitting in on a large cash balance, collecting 7, 8, 9 grand a month in interest on our accounts, and I've got to find a place to put it. Now, there were a couple of options. I was thinking I'll put them into high dividend yield LICs on the market, juice up my borrowing power on my tax return for 2 years, and then double or triple my business income. And then at that time, use that income to come back in, and my income's doubled or tripled. The dividends on my tax return go there, and then I juice it up, and then I go back in and buy a whole lot of resi in a market that hasn't gone up. That was one of my options. The other option was, which I didn't end up liking, because if I'm the buyer at the end when I think a good stock market collapse may happen in the next 2 to 4 years, I didn't want to be that buyer, right? So then I'm like, okay, so let's look over at commercial. So I started looking at commercial, and then I had a chat with Policey Property, the commercial buyers agency. I've known Steve for quite a few years, and I had a chat with his acquisitions guy, Adrian Cecina. And the thought process was this: I was very happy to move money into a regional market, not a city market, because you get about 0.5% to 1% higher yield. Also, your money stretches further, where you can get double the size of the building and the land component. And also, if you get into that kind of range where you're kind of in the 3 to 10 mil range, you're too big for a retail person that can't afford deposits, and you're too small for a REIT or a super fund investor or a insto investor, because they don't look at anything under 10 mil, right? So you're in that sweet spot where you don't need to compete, and generally the yields are better. Also, if you bring that money out of like a Brisbane or a Perth market and you put it into a large regional market, you do have chances to get national tenants with really long leases and good rental yield, which is exactly what we did. So I kind of thought that we were going into maybe a 1 to 3 year like heavy recession, and it could be 4 years, it could be 18 months, I don't care. It's going to be a little bit of bumpiness, right? So then that's what we've done. So we ended up buying in a regional market just outside of Newcastle. I've bought a super cheap auto and a pet barn on a 5 and 7 year lease on a 6% net yield with 3% rental increases. And also, after the 5 and 7 year period, I already know that there's about 40 grand worth of outgoings that I can put onto the tenant to make it a triple net lease, which means nothing comes out of my pocket. It comes out of the tenant's pocket, right? So it makes a true net yield on the lease. All right, I like the fact of where it is because it's got wine country around it. It's got an army base right near it. It's right near coal country, and I think with all this stuff with AI and things, energy needs are going to go through the roof, and coal's going to come roaring back. Coal hasn't been going anywhere for 10 years. And you know, I'm in a position where I bought not a discretionary business, a staples business. So Pet Barn, I think it's just about to be bought out by Coles. Pet Barn's the biggest in its space. People keep spending on their pets, even in recessions. Same with super cheap auto. People need to keep repairing their cars, and especially with the middle class being hollowed out, a lot of more people are keeping their older cars. So they need more maintenance than buying new cars. So both the leases are long enough to get me through the 1 to 3 years of bumpiness, and both are staples businesses, national tenants with 5 and 7 year leases. So I don't even need to blink over the next 1 to 3 years of bumpiness. So that's essentially what we've done. We've rolled our money into that. We spent about 3.8 mil, give or take, and I'm operating it on close to a 50% LVR. So we're in a position where what I thought was going to be close to a 105 net positive has turned into some months. I'm 14.5 to 15 grand net positive on a monthly basis, and that's just coming in while I'm operating my business, and everything's being managed, and I've got one asset with 2 great national tenants now instead of 9 resi investment properties. So that's what we're doing. Send me a message if you've got any questions, and I'll see you on the next video and we'll talk a little bit more.